So Johanna Hainz, thank you so much for joining me today. We're talking about sustainability in the retail sector. If you should point to one thing where retailers can make their supply chain more sustainable, what would it be?
I think most obvious is probably after we're all coming out of the pandemic, shopping only from our sofa is basically the sustainability of the last mile delivery supply chain, right? All these trucks which go to the people's homes, the packaging and all of that, that's the most obvious to consumers and they get concerned about that. So if retailers would want to listen to me, I think I would look at that.
If we talk about food waste, for example, I've seen numbers that around 30 to 40% of all food is actually goes to waste. It's never consumed by the consumer. I imagine this is an area where it's very hard for retailers to control that part of their supply chain. But is there something that can be done?
Now we need to distinguish between what happens before it comes to a store, right, and what happens after. So most people talk about food loss before it reaches a store, and that portion obviously is heavily influenced by how the supply chain is structured. So today most retailers don't control that, you're absolutely right, because they don't want to run the risk of having rotten bananas on the way. But the question is, could they take more control and avoid losing some of these bananas by working directly with the growers and maybe take out all of that intermediary layer and have somebody like a logistics provider just take care of the transport, the visibility, maybe some of the storage, and have then direct control on the choices they make on how much goes where, when, and all of that.
Now we talked about all these problems and questions that companies in the retail sector have. How can a logistics provider help this? What are the conversations that retailers should have with their logistics provider?
I mean, it's more and more really about connecting the dots and collaborating, right? Because retailers are at the end of a very long supply chain and the logistics providers are this glue in the middle. They can work on the increase of visibility, they can work on the increase of digitization of certain processes, and they can obviously take over some of the transport. So the key question is, how can you help me to make my work together with my suppliers more efficient? What are the options? Speed, cost, sustainability, they all play a role in there, and that's really for a logistics provider then to help with.
It seems very often that when we talk about sustainability, it's an expense for retailers. But the way you see it, are there any advantages that can be gained for retailers by being more sustainable?
If we believe what we all read, yes, there's good business sense, right? Because normally companies grow better and they also have a better cost position. And if I just look at the cost position, because that's often where it is placed, there is good business sense in making a process more efficient. And with that efficiency comes usually also more sustainable if you make it a parameter in your choice. Example, if you are able to optimize your delivery routes in your final mile delivery, you use less fuel. But if you also use an electric truck, ta-da, it's also more sustainable. That's kind of the type of connection you need to make.
And finally, if we look to the future, what are the coming trends when we talk about sustainability in the retail sector?
To me, I think there is a number of areas. I mean, we're only at the beginning of automation in the whole warehousing and transportation, especially the final mile delivery, autonomous vehicles, as well as the robotics has still a lot of room to grow. I think that's one portion. The second portion is maybe the data, being also solving the question around how much paper is actually used in the supply chain and really digitizing that and making it more sustainable through that. And I think a last one is, as I mentioned, collaboration is really a big deal. And bringing the supply chains of a supplier, meaning a big packaged goods company, a lot of retailers buy from, together and actually agree on certain standards, processes and flows can take out a lot of waste in the supply chain. Just think about the packaging optimization, right? If you could have more optimized packaging using less material, is more sustainable, uses less space in the truck, uses less space in the store, then all parties have gained something. The one who is producing it, the one who is transporting it, and the one who is using it afterwards. So I do think there's a lot of opportunity also in that kind of what we call normally horizontal collaboration between the parties. I think that would be a big deal.
Thank you so much, Johanna Hainz, for sharing your insights today. Thank you.
Thank you.